Want to do that?
Councilor Payne,
Here.
Commissioner Russell. Here. Supervisor Andrews,
Here.
Mr. Smith. Supervisor Herring. Ms. Wilkinson. Supervisor Barlow.
Here.
Supervisor Jones. Here. Supervisor Reed. Supervisor Rutherford.
Here.
Supervisor O'Brien. Supervisor Galloway.
Here. Thank you. And we'll move to, we do not have anyone that we have to allow to participate electronically. Before we move to, we do have to amend or add a couple items to the agenda tonight. And those items are number 5C, accounting and advisory services. Item 5D, the Central Virginia Regional Housing Partnership appointment. And 6A, the fiscal year 23 amended budget resolution. So those will be added to the agenda. And are there any other changes or additions to the agenda?
Just noting the error on the list of commissioners, I recognize that I put the Louisa folks say Fluvanna. I'll correct that for next month. I just put Fluvanna down twice, so I'll adjust that next week.
So you're representing Fluvanna. So any things you'd like them to do, you should get that in. Not hearing any changes to the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? So moved. All right, the motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, no. Approved. We will go to number 2, matters from the public. Comments by the public are limited to no more than 2 minutes per person. Anyone in the room wish to public comment? Anyone online wish to give public comment tonight? See Sean raising his hand. Great, we will close public comment. And we will move to some presentations this evening. So the first one is a resolution of appreciation for Donald L. Reed. And Ms. Jacobs, you will start with that.
I'm going to start. Don in the back, Don Reed, recently retired this Tuesday as our finance director. He's been with us nearly 17 years. And so I want to say a couple words and then I'm going to have Chair Galloway read the resolution aloud. First, I want to thank Don, not only personally, but professionally for your dedication to the PDC. You have been determined to keep our books clean. We've had clean audits every year that we've been here, and you will go to all lengths to find that penny. So we really appreciate everything that you've done to keep all of our books clean. You've seen a lot of change in this agency between leadership changes, programmatic changes, staff coming and going. You've kind of been the stronghold keeping us all together, making sure everybody understands the role that they play and the role that you play and helping people learn the agency from the inside out. I really appreciate that. You hold a great deal of institutional knowledge that we will miss while you're gone. So you can anticipate that we'll probably call you more than once, trying to get from you all of the wonderful things that you know. We hope you really enjoy the extra time that you have with your family, especially your granddaughter Sugar Pie, I believe you call her. And we're really going to miss you. So I am going to present you with a plaque. Appreciate it. Mind. And then your gallery. There is a appreciation. Present it again. You want to do this one? Can you stand for a picture, Don?
I laugh.
Okay.
And I would love to read this resolution of appreciation as a motion for Donald L. Reed. Whereas Don L. Reed has faithfully served the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission since May of 2006 as finance director. And whereas Don has provided the commission and his co-workers with thoroughness, accuracy, and thoughtful approaches and oversight of TJPDC's finances. And whereas during Don's tenure, the agency's financial needs have grown tremendously. And whereas Don successfully navigated the agency's migration from Great Plains software to QuickBooks to conduct TJPDC's bookkeeping and other financial functions. And whereas Don oversaw the move from presenting quarterly financial statements to the commission to preparing statements monthly. And whereas over the years, Don invested hours of his own time to learn and stay up to date on changes in governmental financial reporting. And whereas Don prepared the agency's financial statements for the annual audit process, achieving a continuous string of clean audits. And whereas the TJPDC most recently has called upon Don to handle financial aspects of the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board and accounting for the Virginia Telecommunication Initiative 2022 grant, the largest grant award in the history of the TJPDC. And whereas the overall quality of services provided by the Thomas Jefferson Planning District during Don's tenure has been enhanced by the knowledge, hard work, and passion that he has brought to the mission of the TJPDC. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission expresses its enduring gratitude and appreciation for the generous and faithful service provided to the TJPDC in this region by Donald L. Reed. Is there a second for that motion? Second. And all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? There you go. That motion carries. And Mr. Reed, thank you so much. Thank you for your service. I can just say a few words if you like, and then I'll give any commissioners who would like to say a few words the opportunity.
Outside of this being a regular job, it's been a pleasure to serve. So that's you know, that sums it up. I think this because this is a much different place today than it was 17 years ago. And I've seen a lot of things come and go, and people come and go. I've seen time when we were rupturing blood back in 13. That and so from chip boils to the work that Christina has done has turned the agency around immensely. And so once again, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, County. And I'll just go around the room if anyone would like to make any remarks. Jim, and you just
appreciate that. This is an amazing legacy, and it should be very magnificent. We are thrilled to have your service.
Thank you, sir.
Kevin?
Well, I know Bella's going to miss you, so really appreciate your current conversation with you. But most certainly miss you, and certainly I've been part of the TJPDC when I was in 13 as well too, and remember all that for, as you said, rupturing blood everywhere, and you were part of holding us together and being steadfast. So thank you very much.
I think you've done a great job, Don. I think you and David are the only ones that have been here through my tenure, and you've been steadfast and done a great job.
Thank you so much.
They've been here for about 3 years when I showed up. Plus or minus, I can't keep up with them.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I've been around as long as other people, but it's remarkable where the planning district commission is at now and what it does for everybody compared to where it could have gone in those rougher years that I've read and heard about. So thank you for being part of getting us to where we are. So thank you.
Yeah, I haven't had the opportunity to interact with, but I do know that with the reports coming through, always with sound and solid. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that Keith had a personal obligation tonight. But Keith has been on this board for 12 years, and I know he served as treasurer, and I know that he was passed along his appreciation for your service, especially helping keep him in line, which we all know the tax staff can be.
I'll remember that. You said that one.
And if I can add from Commissioner Andrew Wilkinson, she wrote saying, please make sure to give my thanks to Don for all of his years of service and tell him I enjoyed working with him.
So thank you again, Don, and enjoy what's coming for you. Thank you. All right, thank you. Let's see, we will go to the next item for the next presentation, B, fiscal year 24 draft rural transportation work program and budget. Sandy, you're going to handle that one tonight.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, the FY 2024 draft rural work program, just to give you all a little bit of a refresher. This is a program that is funded through the VDOT State Planning and Research Fund. So it's a discretionary funding program that the state allocates to regional planning districts to support transportation planning coordination in the non-urbanized areas. We have an annual budget of $72,500. That is a flat budget. Every PDC that operates this program gets the same amount of funding. 80% of that is state funding and 20% of that is a local match contribution. I think you all know this, but the rural areas include the non-MPO portions of Albemarle County, as well as Louisa, Fluvanna, Greene, and Nelson County. Just to give you a couple of highlights so that you know what we have done with this program in the past. In FY 2023, through these rural transportation programming funds, we completed the Zion Crossroads Gateway Plan. We provided some additional staff report for the regional transit vision plan, as well as for the governance study that is currently underway. In addition to what we were received through the technical assistance grant from the State Department of Rail and Public Transportation. We are currently in the process of developing some priorities for bicycle and pedestrian improvements in the rural areas. We consistently provide technical support with grant applications for the rural areas, such as Smart Scale, or sometimes we've done this with transportation alternatives program funds, or this past year I supported an application for a growth and accessibility planning grant application. And then we also this past year used this to develop the grant application for the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. So what we are proposing in FY 24 that we will use the rural transportation work program funding for, as you can see, this first top category is the administrative budget. So that's pretty standard ongoing activities. We have to do regular reporting and invoicing, developing the agendas and the meeting content for the Rural Transportation Advisory Committee, and then general information sharing, which includes training for our staff, making sure that we are attending meetings with the localities and VDOT, things of that nature. And then with the actual planning funding that we're receiving, we have proposed to program some additional support to do a safety data analysis process and support of the Safe Streets and Roads for All Regional Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, which we will also be requesting programming funding from the MPO's work program as well. We will continue to support the development of smart scale pipeline projects and applications. We will continue to support technical assistance, and then we will provide rural coordination for transit, ride sharing services, and also multimodal transportation solutions. I will mention that one of the other items that we're going to be pursuing in fiscal year 2024 is a what are they called? Strategic plan for the rideshare program. And so some of this funding under task 171D will also be to provide some additional support to develop that plan outside of the grant amount that was requested for that program. We're not asking for any action from you all tonight. I'm presenting this draft for you all for you to provide any feedback or comments or ask questions. And then this will be presented to the Rural Technical Advisory Committee at their meeting in March, and it will come back to you at your meeting next month for you to officially endorse or tell us that you want some revisions made to it. Any questions on the rural work program?
The draft copy of the plan was included in the packet.
See any questions?
Thank you. Okay, 1-9.
They want to be in the loop.
Okay, we will move to the next item. The next is the blue cigarette tax board update, David Andrew. Sorry.
Yeah, I think I'm in the presentation part. Ruth's gonna handle the technology here. She got a lot from you. We wanted to make sure that we were regularly updating you all on the blue cigarette tax form. We were last year in September. So I'm gonna try and
Hold on a second, there is an echo.
Trying to get in your speakers.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to see the slides on.
Yeah, he's trying to up his roster game. He's double checked it.
All right, so we were last year in September, so it's been 6 months, and a lot of snapping with the regional cigarette tax board and cigarette taxation in the counties. First, just to give you a little refresher on how we got to where we are. 2020 General Assembly session is when a number of additional taxing authorities for counties were implemented, including the authority to tax cigarettes for all the 2 counties that already had the authority, those being in Northern Virginia. Came back the next year, and there was some additional legislation to encourage regional cigarette stamping and collection by regional boards. And really kind of laid out in the legislation what some of the duties of those regional boards would be. Regional boards were to be guided by agreements that establish their membership and note their powers and duties and how they collect and distribute members. We were very fortunate, I think, here at TJPDC to have several of the counties come forward to us. Not only to ask the TJPDC to lead this effort on a regional basis, but also to be very involved in setting it up. A work group that included representatives of several of the jurisdictions that ultimately became part of the board that met regularly. Probably the biggest lift that we had was just running some financial scenarios, where expenses were going to be, what projections we would have for sales and revenues. And then we did, as you recall, requests from each of the jurisdictions that expressed interest in joining the board, which started the funds to reflect those projections. So following the approval of necessary memorandum of understanding, the cigarette tax board was established at its first meeting in October of 21. You can see there are 8 members, 6 counties. We have the town of Madison, in addition to Madison County. And we're glad to have the City of Charlottesville, which is our already been implementing cigarette tax to join the board as well. Next slide. So new local taxes for the counties and the town of Madison took effect beginning of January of last year. So we're just over a year into it. On a monthly basis, TJPDC is working with about 25 distributors. They're submitting monthly reports about their stamps, their sales. They're submitting revenue remittances as far as the collection of taxes from retailers. They get to knock up 2% for their costs, and then they send us the rest. You've heard me probably talk before about Gretchen Thomas, our administrative assistant. We really just kind of took this over when it started January a year ago, and she's the point person for handling the remittances and reports, making sure all the numbers match up, the number of cigarettes being reported, matches on different forms, number of stamps that are reported. And she's kind of like down to the penny, like we were talking about guns, it is cigarette plastic. So, and then facilitates them turning that around and getting the checks sent out to the jurisdiction. So we do that on a monthly basis. We back out our administrative expenses from the revenue that's collected from distributors and then send the balance to the jurisdictions based on the state. Next slide, please. So just to give you an idea of some of the numbers, just completed reports here the end of February for January collections. You can see the total revenue collected just over $220,000. It's actually down. We have been running for a while, closer to about $250,000 on a monthly basis. So we really starting to see some of the cigarette sales and revenues kind of letting them off. There you can see the 6-month figure for the first half of fiscal year 23, about 1.45 million. And that's on total packs sold during the same period, just under 5 million packs of cigarettes, just in those 8 jurisdictions. And then the administrative costs for TJPDC, which includes a little bit of corrections time, or a little bit of produce time, a little bit of night time, a lot of corrections time, and our compliance agent that's out in the field, which we'll talk about in a minute as well. But, just kind of a summary there, as I said, packs, the number of packs sold, revenues starting to level off from what we've seen, probably in the first 6 to 8 months of the collections. Those revenues are due to the July through December timeframe, 1.45 million. If you put that out over the course of the year, it's about on track with what we had projected on a yearly basis. I think we projected about 2.8 million a year, so we're pretty close to that. Unfortunately, what we like to see, our expenses are running pretty far below, I think, our initial projection. So that's a good thing. It's more money going back to lower jurisdictions. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the board is up and running. They meet on a quarterly basis. They had their most recent meeting in January. We'll meet again in April. Some of the things that the board has done recently, there was an initial application fee for the distributors to be registered with the TJPDC as the board's administrator to do business with us, and that was $200. The board came back and said, there's no sense in $200 being paid every year. So we lowered that to $50 for a renewal. They've adopted some policies dealing with what the financial obligations would be for additional counties or any other jurisdictions to come to the board, which would be in line with paying their fair share of some operating expenses and for the revenue reserve fund that the original jurisdictions were asked to pay. And then they also have adjusted the pack sold ratio. We just spend a minute on that because the way that we kind of calculate the administrative costs are based on the number of packs sold and the proportion that are sold by each jurisdiction. So if you're a quarter of the number of packs sold in a given month, then quarter of the administrative expenses are allotted to that jurisdiction. We have been doing that. We did that to close out fiscal year 22. The board had said, yeah, let's just do that. You're moving forward at the close of the fiscal year. But then we came back and had some further discussion. The board decided that we would do it on a monthly basis. The board decided that we would do it on a monthly basis. That way you're kind of truing up your numbers every year or every month. That pack sold ratio will look a little bit different every month, but then you avoid a big true up at the end of this. So we actually just started that for January. We had January. So not any more work for TJPDC. I think moving forward, I think for real smooth they're going to be moving. And they've also just most recently agreed to what we call the investment strategy. And we have $140,000 in reserve funds. We're certainly getting some small amount of referrals on that right now. The registration fees that are coming in, we're more than covering our costs, but we've got this fairly sizable amount of money that's just sitting in the bank. So we're going to move that into something that's going to be a little bit more reflective of the market these days and be able to generate some revenue. And then finally, I would mention working with the state tax department right now to develop a memorandum of understanding with them, which I think is really going to help with our compliance efforts and really being able to have best possible handle on where the retail establishments are. They're selling cigarettes. As if they're selling cigarettes, they have to go through an approval and licensure process with the state tax department. So we're trying to execute an MOU with them so that they can release certain data to help us be able to find those that we may not necessarily know about that are selling cigarettes. Next slide. And so let's get away to compliance. As I said, we have our compliance agent out in the field. He's been out since September. We're guesstimating we have about 240, 250 retail establishments across the region selling cigarettes. That's probably growing because it seems like these tobacco and vape shops are starting to pop up right now. But he is probably close to half, visiting half of those. And again, initially the goal was to be informative and be educational about the tax, about what the local ordinances are, and to work with the retail establishments in order to move them in a direction to be in compliance. They have the proper Blue Ridge Cigarette Task Board stamp on all of their cigarettes, so that you know, distributors are doing their job, the retailers are selling cigarettes for the stamp, and the correct amount of taxes paid back to the distributor. The difference of the TJPDC. So happy to report that most of the retailers that we're working with, 95, 98% of them are in compliance or working toward compliance. We have had one incident here most recently. We worked with a retailer, you know, to push them a little bit harder than some of the others in order to make sure that they were. And then the final thing I would mention with compliance, the board initially established for cigarettes that were on the shelf as of January 1 of 2022, when the new stance started to take effect. The board allowed a 90-day sell-through period. So any of that product that was sitting on the shelves, whether it had a state stamp or some of their jurisdiction stamp, where that could be sold. Well, 90 days is now 390 days plus. So we're going to start working with those retailers to do some rubber stamping so that the stamps or the cigarettes that are still quote unquote out of compliance can continue to be sold even for some additional time. So that again, part of our as the compliance agent has got out of the field trying to work with them to continue to. And I believe that might be it. Yeah, there's a page on the TJPDC website for the board. It has some good information about the jurisdictions that are part of the board, the tax rates. There's forms that the distributors would need on there. We have the agendas and minutes for all of the quarterly meetings before they're on that website. Try to direct people to that for more information. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Nelson County doesn't tax cigarettes.
Do you have any questions about the revenues that are coming in?
I think Ernie does. Are you on there, Ernie?
I actually have some questions. So I'm not shocked by the amount of tax that are coming. I think it's even higher. We all have that kind of factor. Is the workload for the gentleman going because he's part-time, correct? So is the workload suitable for the part-time position?
Until he gets through visiting all of the establishments that we're aware of, once it may be hard to say, and I think he probably is even foreseeing that given the growth that he's seen and coming upon ones that were not on our list. As I mentioned, the back of the vape shops, that this could quickly move to being one of just a part-time position.
I mean, the revenues there to cover the cost, so that's not the concern. Just if it grows to be beyond what we thought. So these stamps that are the cigarettes that aren't stamped, that were under 390, is this? Am I misunderstanding?
Yeah,
Is this old inventory?
Yeah, it's really old inventory, and I'm not a smoker, so I don't know how, good a 5-year-old pack of cigarettes is, but I think.
Some shops are just not moving.
Yeah.
A lot of cigarettes.
Yeah, some shops don't move them. I think there's some cases where you have some off brands that may be a favorite for, a particular customer or two. There's not a lot of them. And there may be some issue with others in terms of rotating their stock, and then they're not doing that, which I'm doing that. It's not a large volume, but it is, I know, at least at one, I guess at the corporate level, we had an inquiry about how we're going to deal with these in our retail stores, because, they were getting in their stores, they still had stamped cigarettes, and they certainly wanted to be in compliance with local needs.
I don't recall when we set this up that a reserve fund was part of it. What's the intention behind, what was the intent behind setting up the reserve fund? Is it cost worrying about costs, setting up for maybe purchasing the vehicle and making maintaining the vehicle, like. What were their purposes for reserve?
I may let you handle that, because I think that was more of a, just kind of a financial security thing, that the recommendation of some of the financial folks who were part of our working group.
It recommended that we have cash on hand so that we didn't have to go back to the board in order to request additional funds. If we did need to move someone from 0.5 to 0.6 FTE, or if we needed to make incremental changes, we would have funds available to do that.
Because this is, we did purchase a car. and everything.
We did purchase a vehicle.
We did build in, the $25,000 for the purchase of the vehicle. That was including the cost that we asked the jurisdictions to pay the fund. So there was the reserve fund, there was the vehicle, there was certain equipment, and then our guesstimates at that time of what we thought you kind of up and running administrative expenses.
Was that your ongoing maintenance fuel? Was that all part of the cost? Or the reserve?
That's a direct cost with the TJPDC, but it's recovered through the mileage rate. And then we do intend to bring back before the board a policy for them to determine the use of those reserve funds, and it very well may be the case that they request reducing that amount, knowing that we don't have a large need for that reserve fund. So if that were the case, then we would credit that back to all of the jurisdictions in the.
I guess that's the point I'm leading to. I don't know about the other jurisdictions that use the funds from this. But Albemarle, the funds that are coming in, we had to find some specific uses for those revenues. So if that's not that I'm opposed to a reserve fund, but if it's not needed, then they could potentially do some similar type of things if they thought it was, worthwhile. The Albemarle board was particularly interested in some of the numbers. I presume you guys keep like a running spreadsheet of what the actual ins and outs and how it spreads out.
Yes.
If that was available in a report of some sort or an Excel sheet, I'd love to get that.
Yeah, I believe we did that. Sometime in the last several months, should have the meeting certainly.
Yeah.
And we have numbers up through January. So.
Just being that it's budget time and this is a new item, I would imagine it's might even be in our presentations that we receive at some point, that itemization. They just not have gotten it.
Yeah, your staff would have it as your staff. This member of the board. But we can certainly send that to you. And what we can do is just kind of give you a 6-month, this the beginning of the fiscal year period, and then give you this June.
Yeah, because the last time I remember giving them the ramp up to the first 6 months. So it'd be great.
Just two quick questions. I might have missed it, but like, what's like the ballpark number of establishments that aren't in compliance? And are you seeing any kind of geographic clustering of where like there's the highest amount of non-compliance?
Yeah, I need to defer to Ruth, but I think the one that's we had the trouble with is the one that I'm aware of. I don't know if there's been some others that have been, slow to get the program. That I think we phrased it either are in compliance or working.
Yeah, there have been a number of retail locations that were in compliance the first time our compliance agent visited. But they have actively taken steps to get in compliance. There are a number of retail establishments who have heard that the cigarette stamps were needing to be complied with, and so they had already taken steps before POTUS showed up. We've had one store in the urban ring that was really not in compliance, but has decided to act. But it's spent a lot of time working directly with retailers to help them understand the purpose of the tax and understand what they need to do and help them with the distributors. Because in a lot of instances, distributors won't take the tax back to be sealed. So they're kind of stuck with the stock.
Okay, and then I would agree with Chair Galloway's comments about the reserve funds. And then the only other question I have, which is probably kind of a dumb question, but I'll ask it anyway, is my understanding is this wouldn't apply to like vape products, which are taking over a significant part of the cigarette market. We all know have higher nicotine content, same companies own them. Is there any conversation about this tax ever applying to vape products that are sold in packs, which many of them are, or is that just something that probably won't happen anytime in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, and what, what happens at the state level, be a decision for the general assembly to authorize that, but right now it's just for cigarettes.
Mhm. And you haven't seen any, I haven't followed
What did you
closely.
think this past session, as far as anybody proposing that, so.
Okay.
I think when we first, started talking about this, there was this, it was about the time they were talking about retail sales of marijuana, so, maybe it's marijuana and state, but as well.
Yeah, we were curious if it would extend to non-cigarette, but also other tobacco products.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, anyway, all these vape shots popping up, they're basically the equivalent of cigarettes and more addictive, so, but. We'll wait for the general assembly to do. Thank you.
All right, we will move to thank you guys. Move to item number 4, the consent agenda, just the minutes of the February 2nd, 23 meeting. Any changes to those minutes or edits? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of approving I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Approve the minutes.
Second.
So a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Extension.
2.
3.
Still got my PAs there.
Is that passes to-
What's that?
I heard Jesse Tony is top.
Always, yeah. I'm guessing, right?
You're what?
Say it was the 3 of us, we all said.
Yeah. Rachel had a proxy, but I don't think she.
All right, we'll go to new business and 5A, the fiscal year 23 amended operating budget. James.
That's on the budget. Okay, the FY 23 amended operating budget was brought to you in draft form in the last commission meeting in February. We are recommending a budget with expected revenues of 41,339,674, with expected expenditures of 41,327,650. Upon adoption, this would be the budget that will be used for our final budget and auditing and reporting purposes once it's approved. There are a couple of changes from last month to this month, small changes in most cases. There was a slight reduction in rental income revenue to more accurately project. I did a deeper dive into the rental of our space here at the Water Treat Center and our tenants. So I reduced that slightly by $4,000. For expenses, there's a slight decrease in salary and fringe associated with the retirement of our finance director, and then a $53,000 increase in projected contractual expenses for the need to contract out the financial function in the short term. So pulled a little bit more money into that contractual line item just to make sure we had ourselves covered. Anticipated net gain for FY 23 conservatively is 12,024, but staff anticipates it's going to be higher than that, assuming we don't have any unforeseen costs with the financial function.
Great. Any questions? The next item, the executive director evaluation process. And so someone else is next. So the process that was followed last year for the executive director evaluation, we did a staff survey. There was also a survey done of the commissioners. Now, if you do recall, that was kind of the first evaluation we had done since Christine came on board. Then an ad hoc committee was formed. That was myself, Commissioner Herring, and Commissioner Rutherford. And they met in closed session to review and to go over the evaluation. And then the full commission went into closed session in April to discuss that evaluation. And then the action at the conclusion of that was a salary increase that took effect July 1. So the conversation for tonight is if the commission desires to follow the same process, or David may have some comments about whether or not the survey portions need to happen on an annual basis. Yes. So that's something that we would get. What? No.
I would say no.
So, well, yes, you have comments.
Okay, yeah. My comment Yeah.
The comment is, does not believe the survey needs to happen on an annual basis, but perhaps every other year or
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
That still would put together the full commission. Is the ad hoc, I'm trying to remember the ad hoc committee. The work we did was to look at the surveys.
I think it was in a good way. That way, we also ran into, I think part of that was because of the virtual nature we were in, there was not really a lot of interactions and stuff. So we this is really our first year of being in reality. So I think, we're a commission now probably has a little bit more ability to. I'm not necessarily against the surveys. I think we've historically done them. I can definitely also appreciate doing them every other year. We did them before every year, I think. Some years it was just a little bit more impactful than others.
Trying to recall in a previous year before the surveys, was there any sort of evaluation
There was no
instrument that was used?
There was no normal evaluation until pre-COVID. So this would be last year was kind of the closest thing to normal. So anything after this would hopefully be setting the more normal thing that we were used to.
If there's not a survey, it would help just with organization for the commissioners, or maybe to do the evaluation, have some sort of rank. Not necessarily a survey that they complete, but an instrument that can be completed that evaluates you that they can follow. So perhaps we could come up with something like that.
Yeah, I could have done it a few times.
There's plenty of, I think with, for executive director positions in each of our counties, we have some of those forms. If we do something like that, I don't think we necessarily would need the ad hoc committee to get together. We can put the instrument out to the commissioners and then have them in by deadline, compile them, and then the full committee, in the closed session, and just have a whole conversation and whatnot. If it's all right with the commissioners, maybe Jesse and I can kind of put our efforts together to come up with what a good instrument would look like, and then put that out. Any objection to that as an approach? And then we'll go from there. Timeline. We met in April. The full commission met in closed session in April. So did we do that on a specific timeline because of the new hire?
Because of the FY24 budget is presented as a draft in April, and so if there were any salary increases, I could incorporate them into the May approval budget.
Got it. So we want to try to get this done by the conclusion of April.
Right.
All right. And
So the April closed session of the agenda.
anything I missed there, David? And I don't know if you have anything that you used, maybe you can look and, but I know we have some in Albemarle, I'm sure you have some.
I mean, and we've got probably 10 that we've used with Survey Monkey multiple times. That's usually the method.
So that means distributing survey out for commissioners to complete in advance of the closed session. Is that what you're saying?
Typically, that is what's been done.
Yeah, and be distributed a certain amount of time.
Yeah, and then we
Allow
double
us.
down and made sure people were filling.
I don't recall, I think the responses to the surveys were very good, very
Yes,
timely.
we usually
Without
have.
pushing
Yeah,
last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
We'll move to 5C. This was one of the items added, the accounting and advisory service. Christine.
Okay, so accounting and advisory services with Don's retirement effective Tuesday. We are going to use, or we are using emergency procurement in order to get, or we already have a firm in place immediately to make sure that we don't have any gaps in our financial function. Additionally, we have released February 10th, a request for proposals for accounting firms to submit proposals should we contract this function out. We also are actively advertising the finance director position and have begun to receive applications for that job. So proposals are to be received by tomorrow is the deadline. So we will begin reviewing the contracted out positions. We've already started doing screening calls for the applications that we've received. And we'll continue to use Hansman and Weevil until we can permanently fill that position. What I put into what was added late was the letter of agreement with Hansman and Weevil. I just want to be transparent with you all about the costs and the services that they would be provided. Because it does exceed the 30,000, or likely if we were to do it for several months, would exceed the 30,000 threshold that requires the commission to approve that expenditure.
Any questions?
Questions from you all? Written into that agreement, we also have Hansman Weevil is willing, once we either contract it out or hire a person. There's time in there associated for them to help us train that person because they've been very involved in our financial function as a consultant to Mr. Reed. And so they're planning to help us with the next person's training.
And we need to take a vote on that one. We're just approving the contract.
We're approving the executive director to move forward with contracting with them.
That is the motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the next item, we have the appointment to the Central Regional Housing Partnership. This is for the developer representative.
Okay, so we have a recommendation for you all for Mr. William Park to serve as the developer. He has been contacted and is willing to serve. This is a TJPDC appointed position on that partnership. Bringing it for you guys to approve.
He's with Pinnacle.
Correct.
Huh.
Yes.
The sharp guy, yeah. Yeah, nice. We'll make a motion.
Appreciate you, Ray.
Mr. Park to the Central Virginia Regional Housing Partnership. Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? We did the comments on the, we just need the resolution now for the executive fiscal year 23. So if there is a member that would like to make a motion of the fiscal year 23 amended budget resolution for.
I move to approve the amended budget resolution for FY23.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion. Flying through. Oh. And that will bring us to number 7, the executive director report.
In the executive director's memo that I include in the packet, and gives an update on the body project milestones to date. Today was the quarterly meeting that we held with all 13 jurisdictions and all of the private sector partners to give a quarterly update on that project. So each month we're committed to putting this data into the ED report so that you guys have that on a month-over-month basis. And then quarterly, the TJPDC staff would present. No, every 6 months, the TJPDC staff will present on body. We are anxiously awaiting body 2023 results. I think everybody is anxiously awaiting that. We still haven't heard when that's going to be coming down. For the housing, the Coming Back Home Regional Housing Summit is occurring on May 24th at the Omni in Charlottesville. Encourage all of you all to attend. I know several of you have already reached out to Ian Baxter. If you have not already, please reach out to him. The TJPDC can cover the cost of that for you all to attend. And then the home or the application that we got 2.4 million from HUD one-time funding. We've worked with all 6 jurisdictions to identify the activities. We submitted the allocation plan to HUD and it was approved on its first round, which we were very pleased to see. That has not been the case for a lot of the consortiums that have submitted their plans. So we're very pleased that that is approved, which means we can now in full force begin setting up those programs in each of the jurisdictions and beginning to spend down that grant. We have until 2029 to fully expend the funds. Transportation updates, we're very pleased and thankful for Sandy's work on submitting a $3.01 million application to RAISE. That stands for Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, and that's for the Fluvanna River Bicycle and Pedestrian Bridge to complete the preliminary engineering so that we can begin to reduce some of the unknowns and hopefully reduce the contingencies on that project so we can apply again for either state or federal funding to move into the next steps. Do you have anything to add on that, or is that?
We will find out June 28th.
Safe Streets and Roads for All, you guys already know that we did receive that award. We have been meeting with VDOT to start the in-depth crash analysis, crash data analysis. And then there is we've just had the kickoff meeting for that just occurred as well. And then we have an upcoming meeting with USDOT to start looking at the contracting. They're going to start rolling out contracts. When did they say? In the next 3 months?
They estimated 45 days, but we'll see.
Get through a couple of these. Regional Transit Vision Plan. We just received our final reimbursement, so that project has been closed out with DRPT, and we are moving forward with the governance study. The consultants on the regional governance study will be coming to our commission meeting to present to you all an update on where they are in that, and along with Lucinda on our team in your next meeting. Additionally, the next steering committee meeting is March 23rd, so for that project. And then ride share, we have developed a request for proposals as part of the approved work plan and budget. We're going to be seeking a consultant to develop a media content library of local images, videos to encourage ride sharing. For economic development, SEDS plan, we developed the strategy committee. We had a kickoff meeting February 13th, and we have monthly internal project management meetings on that. The SEDS is expected to be completed no later than June of 2024, but we anticipate it being sooner than that. Hazard mitigation plan has been officially adopted. Went before Fluvanna as the first jurisdiction. They approved it at their February 1 meeting. So February becomes our 5-year update date of requirement. So we have to do another update in the next 5 years by February. Watershed Improvement Program, the WIP. Staff has been working with USDA Forest Service for what I explained to you guys last time, the STU-MAP, Stewardship Assessment and Mapping Project. I've asked Bella if she's willing in the next few months. We're going to let it progress a little bit further, but in the next few months to come to you all to present that so you can understand the STU-MAP work that's happening with USDA. The RRBC, Fluvanna River Basin Commission, Stakeholder Advisory Group, hosted the STU-MAP kickoff just 2 days ago. And those are all the updates I have.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Christine? Correct. Move to 8A, other for 2R roundtable discussion. Already chatty bunch tonight. So curious to see how this goes.
Just talking a lot over here. I can't even think straight.
A little tired.
I am exhausted.
I'll start here with Michael. Just go around the table. Michael.
It's 4 a.m. day.
Sure. Well, I guess a few updates. We had an interim city council position to fill. One of our councilors resigned at the beginning of the year, and we've since filled that position with Leah Puryear, who's a longtime school board member and leader of the Upward Bound program at UVA. Likewise, we are just beginning the process of we've selected a firm to do a national search for our next permanent city manager, and that is underway. And the goal is to have that a decision made by June or July, roughly that time frame. The first module of our zoning rewrite has been released, and we've had our open sessions and first joint work session about it. That first module is just the zoning districts and where those zoning districts are located in the city. There'll be 2 more modules that will get more into the affordable housing requirements, environmental protections, and other things. And we recently had a public forum about gun violence in the city, led by the chief of police, which is a very, I think, good and honest discussion about all the different tensions there. And then, of course, on Tuesday of this week, we had an officer-involved shooting involving Charlottesville police in the parking lot of the Red Roof Inn. involves both Charlottesville and Albemarle County Police, but that is something that is now there's an investigation on being done by the Virginia State Police, and is certainly something which has attracted a lot of community attention and desire for an investigation.
Ms. Russell?
They might have covered it all.
Good. So we will go to, well, it's Louisa County, it's not. I have to do it. It was Jones.
That's Tommy.
Yeah, right.
Oh, me, well, we're in budget season. It's not good. Our assessments went through the roof. I think many of yours probably did too. It's not just Louisa County. It's been hard for our residents. Take that. Last year, we did make some adjustments to our personal property tax, and I think discussing possibly figuring out if there's anything we can help with our assessments. We'll see. Haven't really sat down and discussed that hard, but Louisa County was rocked this week with a horrible tragedy that has I'm sorry. It was a friend of my daughter's. We had 5 baseball players involved in a very serious car accident. You've probably seen it on the news. That has been very hard, but I have to say, I think we're a strong community and we've been rallying around families, and we're a small knit community. And Nelson County brought pizza to our teachers at the high school this week from Nelson, so we appreciate that. Their school district to ours, and the support that we've received as we get ready to a very, very, very nice young man tomorrow, Saturday. So no, that's just affected me a lot this week. The governor came into Louisa today. And he came to our schools and to our high school, and he did a read across America. So that was good. That was a little bright spot for us, I guess. And he had some very kind words to say to our baseball team. But I'll pass it over to Tommy, because this week has been pretty much a wash for me as far as government.
Well, as Rachel mentioned, we're starting into the budget season like everybody, and that's the worst part of it being on the board.
Yeah.
Being sitting there, that's,
Yeah.
we got a lot going on in Louisa, but it seems like that everything we have going on, we're on the gag orders not to discuss.
Yes, that's true. Good things are coming. We can't talk.
I reckon one of these days we'll be able to tap something, but you know, I think, like I said, there's a lot going on with everybody that you get interested in coming into the county. First thing you do is put you under restriction of not being able to talk about it. So I guess one of these days, if any of it happens, we'll be able to put it out there in discussion. All up to time.
The young man that was killed in the shooting on Bay Street. Is that right? I think it was Bay Street. That was the boyfriend of our assistant county administrator's niece. And
Sydney too.
our assistant county administrator.
No, that's the girl.
Other girl, I don't.
Yeah, I do. She's a very, both Jane used to.
Yeah, and so tragedy strikes the whole community, and that's a shame. That was a tough loss there for sure. It's just sort of sad, you know. Anecdotally, you see all these shootings happening in Charlottesville, they'll take for granted it being a pretty quiet, peaceful community. So other than that, budget season, same thing, assessments were up, I think about 17%, which is pretty significant. So our equalized rate would be 77 cents or something like that. So we're struggling with the budget. Big things on the budget are of course, the pay increases that are being promoted by the state, which they're paying half of it. If that, right? And then we're bringing in EMS services in-house. They're contracting that out, so that's a new expense and cost that we're absorbing in. So that's makes for a difficult budget season. We put an advertised maximum rate of 86.5 cents, I think, which is down, but that's of course due to the assessment. So And we approved a concrete recycling plant on 250. Big operation out of Richmond that just does a lot of business up here. And we approved 400,000 square feet of warehouse space on 15. With another 400,000 square feet likely to come. And then for smaller warehouse space, 10,000 unit warehouse spaces, which we approved 100,000 or 200,000 square feet of warehouse space that be smaller little package units that are designed for smaller organizations on 250. So and then we got, of course, some things like Tom said, we can't talk about. They're still very exciting and dear to us. And first time Zions Crossroads is going to have a, I won't say who the national gas chain is, but
No, somebody put that on, put it out on next door.
yeah.
It's coming up.
Wawa is coming to Fluvanna, so that's we're happy to steal a little bit of business away.
Well, I think actually part of our county line kind of crosses there, because I was sitting in a pre-application meeting on that. Trying to discuss that.
Trucks down on my day, you want that?
It's so that's all we say. It's good to finally
And it's-
see the fruits of so many years of efforts to make that happen. So first thing for me, it's been 12 years, and I know for the county it's been even longer. So that's exciting.
That corner needs to get developed. It's
Yeah.
pretty run down. So it's gonna be, it'll be a nice facelift for it.
It will be. I mean, the challenge for us is we've got a lot of industrial industry on 250. So that's just kind of one of those sort of situations. How do you balance that out? Certainly in the minds of a lot of people.
Mhm.
Thank you, Jason.
Well, first, I have to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for coming to our meeting the other day.
It was great.
It was excellent. We enjoyed the conversation, though I beat my board up on housing issues quite often. Having someone, not you, like me, keep saying that to them, it was like light bulbs clicked off and they finally believed me. But no, that was it. Y'all's presentation led to more productive conversation, and we've really taken it seriously on the housing situation in Nelson. And at the end of the meeting, which y'all got to miss, one of the board members had some thoughts on real estate tax mitigation for people who choose to have long-term rentals, especially in homes that were dilapidated and were remodeled. And so what does that look like? I don't want to say all of it's gone, but there's definitely some pretty serious interest in trying to offset the year-to-year burden of the cost of long-term rentals to encourage some of that. So that was a really cool discussion that came right after y'all came and left. We're in the middle of our comprehensive plan. I wouldn't say in the middle, we're finally past the middle and we're getting to the nitty-gritty data pieces. I don't think I was here to talk about kind of the commuter population in Nelson, and it's really intriguing to get to see the history of what Nelson County's workforces look like. Typically we fielded 6,000 to 7,000 working people, and about 4,800 of those people, they'll leave Nelson County to work in jobs outside of the county. Number didn't make us, surprised at all. And then we saw another number, and that was about 1,600 Nelsonians that have been working in Nelson County. That number really didn't shock us at all either. But the scary number that we got was the number of Nelsonian, or not Nelsonians, but people who have to come into Nelson County to work Nelson County jobs. And that number is above 2,000. So, we had a really long, lengthy discussion recently in our comprehensive plan about what that data means to us. Does that mean we want that 4,800 to live and work in Nelson County? Does that mean we want those 2,000 to be able to infiltrate our economy in Nelson and live that 2,000? And so there's a lot of really hard questions that we have to ask ourselves and how we do that. Median house sale in Nelson County is $400,000. That's pretty serious. And to be able to infiltrate that number, you got to make real money. further the burden, we're finding out that close to 17 to 20% of our population work from home. What does that mean? Now, all of a sudden, internationally, nationally, you're a place that people want to live, eat, work, play, and raise their family. So we've got a lot of different kind of burdens that we're trying to figure out. And the conversation about a land trust of sorts is of interest. And there's been numbers talked about in the hundreds of homes. There are hundreds of lot ready potential. And so that's serious. And those discussions want to be continued. And our board does want to meet with land trust at some point to discuss what that means and what potentials could exist. We have a very big meeting on Tuesday to discuss the future of that land acquisition and how that relates to housing, job creation. Kind of funny thing about the word job creation is you got to have people to do the jobs. So we kind of quit saying it. And I know as me as a diehard conservative kind of guy, job creation, that was the Reagan way in so many different fashions, but I've now come to the reality of I could create 200 jobs and I have absolutely no clue who's going to work any of them. And we've come to the realization that Amherst County is having to field a lot of our talent specific roles and a lot of our kind of low end like infiltration of certain career paths. So Amherst County is fielding our jobs just as Nelson County is fielding the jobs of Albemarle and Charlottesville, which is a very perplexing thing to be in a rural county context. So that's where we are.
Is anybody, just out of curiosity, or any of the counties gonna sponsor the Albemarle regional housing? Central Virginia regional housing?
Nelson County did.
Nelson did, Albemarle did,
Charlottesville.
Charlottesville did.
Okay, well, we did, we were the only ones who
Did.
did last year, so we were just chugging it.
The virtual one.
Yeah, that's what we were the only ones who did last year, so our board was kind of like, well, nobody else is doing it.
Do you want me to? Yeah.
I think Greene County did.
What's that?
I think Greene County did as well.
Okay, good to know. I'm sure we're good for that. I can't speak for my other four board members, but I'm confident it'll be okay.
Great. So that's all I got.
Chris.
I know, let me text him right now.
Jim?
Well, we are in the thick of starting into our budget. We had our first public hearing on it last night. Meeting went till 12:15 in the morning, but it wasn't because of the budget. Although it was interesting to see so many people there to hear our presentation and to have people speak because they are concerned about the assessments and so it makes it a little more difficult. But the proposal by our county executives for a flat assess rates on real estate and personal property. And recall, like many last year, personal property taxes were dropped significantly based on an expectation that valuations were excessively high for vehicles. They've come down. So that effectively means that there's a significant drop in personal property taxes for this year, but there's a significant increase in assessments of real property. And so that's sort of treading that line a little bit. It's a $551 million budget, but that is almost 35 million less than last year, which shows what happens when a lot of federal money goes away. And we have to figure out how to cover those needs, and our capital needs are significant. We've got, of course, the schools, about 57%, we put all the capital in there of that budget. It's just called schools. But yeah, we were there late because of a development that has been approved on Old Ivy next to the University North grounds, and very controversial because of traffic. We also had several traffic town halls over the previous month. They were, I think, very successful in getting people out to express their concerns. They were initially started by the police department, just telling people about safety concerns with distracted driving and some statistics along those lines. But of course, once it went to the open forum, it became a lot about concerns about different traffic issues throughout. And this isn't really a traffic issue, but I'll turn it back to the chair by saying we did one little nice thing yesterday, and that is we took a little street that really doesn't do much except to connect to Darton Town Park, Three Ridge Lane, and we're turning it into a promenade, I think. So we'll close it to traffic and it's right along the Fluvanna River. It's very pretty and little, nice little place. Just take a walk. So.
The interested, the last few years, the budget, the first public hearing, any of the public hearings haven't really brought anybody out. So this year, we had about 8 or 9 people talk last night to the budget. And we had half of those were on affordable housing advocates. The other half who were speaking to the assessments, it wasn't so much that they were there just saying, our assessments have gone up, you need to reduce or equalize or do something. But it was more of a line of questioning, trying to understand if the evaluation process more relative to what they're seeing in the immediate housing market, relative to sales prices and such. And it's a lot of the stuff that's in the presentation that Keith gives as part of the housing partnership presentation that we do. For those folks from my district, that's I love it when people come in and engage at that level. I mean, it's one thing to just come in and go, things are too high, you need to do this, or it's too low and you just got to raise it. We get both ends for asking and advocating for the thing, but when they engage at that level and start asking those type of questions, I think that's interesting. And I think they'll follow along during the budget process this year. So I'll be curious to see, since this is the first one, and the other public hearings will bring out more folks as they continue to follow the process. It was great, the Nelson County presentation that Keith and I did, not the presentation, the engagement. When we go to these, you never know what to expect, Keith and I. And we always wonder if the person that, like Jesse's on the regional housing partnership, so is he going to take the lead and do all the talking? And we kind of go into these thinking, well, hopefully they'll help, trigger it. Jesse didn't say a word. It's great. And his supervisor, especially one in particular, was really engaged with it. And it was right on the heels of their compensation study and conversation that they were going over, which I was thrilled to be there to sit and listen to that. I learned quite a bit being in the audience. But that back and forth, this was the first presentation after it was a great engagement with the board, where we had folks in the audience jumping up to come over to talk to us and the staff from TJPDC, developers from Nelson County asking questions. There was an organization there that we'd be able to make a contact with. So that was great as well. I mean, you guys had a full house that day for your agenda. So it was nice to get that level of engagement afterwards. Jesse had to kind of shoo us out of the room because we were talking after the break. So that was great. So we were thrilled to be there. We're looking forward to coming where I know we're working out to have a little bit different agenda time with Fluvanna. And I know we're working to get Louisa. We just got invited to do a presentation. I'm not even sure who it is to yet, but they were asked to be on the calendar for Keith and I today to do a presentation with UVA, that Regional Housing Partnership presentation. And it looks like we'll put in a portion of it during the coming back home. So it's just a topic that's hitting all of us, and there are a lot of people trying to understand it further. It's been great meeting everybody.
There was still a lot of bias. I think, folks think, oh, no, you can still rent for this, or it's like, no, you can't. Maybe you're renting a place like that, but nobody's leaving that place. And so it's really hard to convince supervisors that there is a problem, there is a crisis occurring. We had our first, we have our my 2 cents. People can submit their comments that way. They want our first people saying, can't afford to live in my house any longer. I'm going to start living in my car. And that's pretty pathetic. And the world of that, you would think it'd be a pretty affordable place.
I think philosophical. And one of the most important things to happen is for the politics to catch up with the issue and for elections to finally be influenced. I can proudly say, in a really strange turn of events, that by the efforts regionally, probably by the board to an extent, every candidate who's running for board of supervisor in Nelson County, one of their top 3 is affordable housing. And for that to be in the rural context is really, really neat to see happen. Because Haven't really seen that happen south of us. Amherst doesn't really care, Buckingham really doesn't care. But now for the first time, we're seeing that each person realizes that if they don't talk about it, they're not gonna be able to get elected. And so finally, the politics is starting to catch up in the communities to where it finally influences elections. And so I think that's eventually it just goes to that point, you know.
Well, if you guys are still thinking about attending the coming back home, I think it's gonna be a great day in terms of resources and folks. And there are people that I'm encouraging to attend, and Jesse's gonna be one of the panelists about. For those who you think the bias that you spoke to and understanding who actually has problems with affordability, and that's where Jesse's gonna talk about it in his county. So I think it's gonna be a great day. The first one went off really well. We had great attendance, people were speaking that it was the content and the information was working, so I think that'll deliver again this year.
And I will say, I know for a fact 4 out of the 5 board members, our Nelson County board members will be at.
Great.
That's
And then I promised Ian that I would add, and I'm so glad you guys started talking about the summit again. I promised him that I would add that evening before the summit is a networking event. That networking event is intended for the keynote speaker, the Regional Housing Partnership, any members of the panel or speakers. And then you all as commissioners will be invited as well. So Ian will be sending that out to you guys directly to RSVP if you're interested in coming.
that is.
That is not.
Oh, don't forget to email us the slide thing. The occupation,
The hand tool.
yes,
Okay.
we didn't get that yet. I don't-
Why don't you, for the local areas, it's not.
It's not developed for our area. I think they
Yeah.
would see the one that was developed up.
It would be neat for the design planning commissions.
And then the only other thing I'll say about an Albemarle is it really seems like it's taking up a lot of time, our Airbnb applications, homestay applications. So as we've had an ordinance in place and as others deal with it, there's been some interesting conversations that go on at our board that are taking more than the allotted time. It's probably one of the topics. There's a couple of topics when you always think of if you have a like-minded or a body that's of one politic, when you think of politics, quote unquote. But homestays and probably turf fields of all things, things that really you could, boy, the Albemarle County Board can really split and get into some interesting conversations about. Awesome. Any other items or things, Scott?
Awesome.
Great.
There you go.
Awesome. Next meeting will be April 6th, 2023. There on the agenda, you can see quite a slew of items coming forward. Christine, anything that anyone call out or just heads up on? But it looks like a lot of items to be there, so we'll have a full meeting. We hopefully will have our full crew back. We'll all be towards, we'll be probably about 3/4 of the way through the budget, getting closer to the end. So with that, it was good to see everyone tonight, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Conference is in 2 weeks, right?
March 24th.
Yeah. Well, there's all of you.
Mr. Barlow made a motion, I'll second it, so.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, nice to see you, sir. I always forgot my laptop charger. Yeah.